going to talk today about new innovative ways of including horses in the wellness industry and finding new applications and uses, so to say, for horses. So in particular, we're going to talk about the equine-human connection and how we've been connected for over 6,000 years actually as humans and horses. I'm going to talk about ways of creating new bonds. So as I was telling you, these innovative new methods that I'm promising you. And we're going to talk about the science behind it. But first, let me just introduce myself. So my name is Tash Enriquez. I have my own company called Created Coaching, which is a holistic and scientific-based coaching company. So I believe in combining mental and physical health together. My background actually is as a personal trainer. I have a postgrad degree in sports and exercise science and medicine. I'm a nutrition coach, but I'm also a life coach. And I've been working in the field for over 15 years now. And I don't only believe, I know by now that we cannot cure, we cannot solve any problems of the mind without solving the problems of the physical body and vice versa. So it's so strongly connected that we have to bring these two together. Now, where horses come into that is that I first met Yasmin Al-Sayed, who's going to be speaking after me and talking to you about horse rescue. Please stay for her speech as well. And through Monica, I met another now friend and colleague, and we started working together. We opened 2 retreats in Abu Dhabi in March, and this lady is doing something called horse-guided empowerment, something that I'm now a practitioner of as well. Now, with horse-guided empowerment, we are really using not just the power, but the wisdom of horses and the way horses interact together in a herd to help humans. So we're not coaching horses, we're coaching humans, but we're using the horses. And I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about it. So let me play you a little video, and that also gives you a better idea of what horses actually can do for us.
Horses. Powerful, majestic animals, which have been our loyal companions and servants for centuries. When an entire herd is moving together, it creates a lot of energy and emotion. What can we learn from this about moving forward together? How can we bring together lots of different cultures, backgrounds, and beliefs in our personal lives and in business? How can we include even the weakest members to benefit from their wisdom and make sure that the entire herd is moving together in one direction? How can we shift our attention, redirect movement, and establish connections? Connections that are meaningful and help us get through hard times together as one team, as one family, as one humanity. Horses depend on non-verbal communication. They depend on being fully present, aware, and attentive to their environment. As humans, we depend on verbal communication. But this method is flawed, and often miscommunication occurs because we haven't learned to truly listen. Listen without preconception, without judgment and prejudice, without expectations. Horses can teach us to tap into our intuition, to be present, to be still.
So the first part of the video was actually Yasmin's horses, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as well, but they are all rescue horses. So that again brings a completely different dynamic into our work as well. But I'll talk about that at a little bit later stage. This scene was from the retreat that I just mentioned about, and that's my other colleague who was here a few days ago as well. So the equine-human connection. So as I'm saying, we've been using horses for over 6,000 years. And if you just look at this picture, this is what we used to get horses to do for us. Now, horses are prey animals. So imagine what an immense task it is to get a horse to trust you enough or to be submissive enough to follow you into this scene where there is blood, where there is noise, where there is terror, where there is drama. Yeah? But if you think about how horsemanship used to be done way back when, it was a whole different story of trust. And people were actually starting to live together with the horses in the stables from a very young age. They really had to earn their way up until they were knights, until they actually went into battle themselves. So the humans as well as the horses had to undergo through that same process of building that trust together and of then having the mental strength to withstand these scenes and these horrors. Now, especially in this country, horses play such an important role. And if you think about long distance races in horsemanship, there's actually very important lessons that we can learn. And I'm going to say something else. One thing that really fascinates me about this country here is how there is a long-term vision. Now I'm hearing a lot about the next 50 years. What is the plan for the next 50 years? And this is really something this country can be proud of, because that's something that you don't do very often in other cultures and in other civilizations. We plan for short periods of time, to the next election, for example. Here you don't have that. Right now I'm hearing a lot, what's the next 50 years going to look like? We can take that, and we can also see that in the long distance races. How do you get to the end, to the finishing line? Well, you need a few things. You need a vision. You need that clear goal. I'm going to go there, right? And you need a long-term goal. It's not a short-term race. You need to have communication between you and the horse, but also between your team members, between everyone who is involved. Yeah, it's not just the rider and the horse. There's a lot more people involved into that. Everybody needs to be on that same vision. They need to be motivated as well. They need to go together. They need to pull together. We need empathy. Why? Because otherwise, if we don't have empathy, if we just go and we just follow to our vision, we're going to lose everyone behind. So then we don't have that team anymore. And if we're talking about a long-term strategy, you're going to fall short. It might work for a short-term strategy, but not for a long-term, because you need the other people that are in your team and the horses. So yeah, we need to be respectful. We need to work as a team. We need focus, of course, integrity. We need a courage, and we need an engagement. Everybody needs to be behind that one vision. So a lot to be learned just from endurance racing, with horses and without horses as well. As I told you, I have a sports background, so we can always draw the parallels in there. So how can we create new bonds? What are these new methods that I was talking to you about? Well, I'm going to talk about 3 specific aspects: equine assisted or facilitated therapy and coaching, leadership and management training, and equine assisted or facilitated rehabilitation. So first, let me explain the difference between equine assisted and equine facilitated. Because when you think about coaching or training or rehabilitation or therapy with horses, maybe you're getting that image of someone, a person, just being seated on the horse and being carried around, right? So that's something that we now use quite frequently. And there is immense benefit to it. Why? Because the movement of the horses are very calming. They're very, they can really help people to just mentally get a little bit more stability. You feel the connection, you feel the heartbeat of the horse, you feel the warmth of the horse. So there is a lot of benefits to that. However, we can take it a little bit further and talk about equine facilitated coaching. Now, what's the difference here? Here we don't just talk about riding or using the horse to be carried around. We're talking about allowing the horse to be themselves, to be as they would be in a herd. And we learn from that, and we utilize the strengths and the learnings outcomes that come with that. So what does that mean? It means that we observe our interaction with a horse, and normally we like to work from the ground. Doesn't say that we're not riding at all, but we work a lot from the ground. So it's basic interaction with the horses, greeting the horse, observing the client when we talk about therapy and coaching, observing the person when you start to interact with a specific horse. What comes up? And very often as humans we like to have associations. So when I bring people into a few horses, into a group of horses, very often something comes up for them and they'll say like, oh, that's like my mother. She always does that. Let's say the horse is right there, you know, and the horse is very motherly. Yeah, for people, something comes up immediately. And that very often leads to a whole bigger picture, you know. So how do you interact with that horse any further? And then we go into having specific tasks, where we go like, okay, so what is something that you want to achieve in your life? Give me your goal, you know. And then we go, okay, imagine your goal is over there. Now I want you to take the horse and I want you to go to the goal. And we put some obstacles along the way. And each obstacle we are asking the client to have a specific relationship to. They can name that obstacles. What are your obstacles to get to your goal? And then it's something as simple as leading the horse. Now what happens here? As I told you, horses are animals of prey. So if you have any insecurity, if you have any doubt, not about walking the horse there, but any doubts about reaching your goal, the horse will pick up on that. And if you are not trustworthy, why would the horse follow you? They don't even know you. The horses are not specially trained. So again, in horse facilitated methods, we just allow the horses to be themselves. They need to trust you. They might not like just being pulled in one direction. Yeah? They need to feel that you are serious about this. And that's then what we can use to continue with the coaching process and go deeper into, okay, why do you think this happened? Why did the horse stop? Did you stop? You know, what are you feeling? What are your emotions? So the beauty of working with horses is that horses live in the moment. You know, there is no, this was in the past, this is going to be in the future. We don't care about that. It's just what's happening right now. And the other thing is horses will force you to be authentic. So very often we are not aware of our own doubts. We are not aware of our own negative emotions, of our limiting beliefs. But the horse will know. Horses depend on that. Their lives as a prey animal depend on being so intuitive that they will always know what you feel before you know it. So that makes it so easy for me as a coach and as a facilitator to just see what's happening. And if the horse doesn't follow, then there is something going on, you know. And again, you might not be aware of it yourself yet. So this is how horses help us. This is why it's called horse facilitated coaching and therapy. Leadership and management training. So this is something where we really utilize not just one horse or two horses, we utilize the whole herd. Because in leadership and management training, it's about how you manage not just yourself, but how you manage others, how you lead others. And some of you were listening to a talk I did on Monday. And I was talking about the importance of soft skills in leadership training. And I actually asked into the group, and I'm going to do the same here right now, who of you considers themselves a leader? Don't be shy. Okay, now I'm going to tell you that you're all leaders. The reason being is that when we think of leaders, we only think, oh, I need to be in charge of a big team. But you're leading your own lives. You all have family constellations, you all have friends, you all have situations where you might not always be the leader, but you will at some point be the leader, you know. And this is the beauty of being a team. So if we really want to be good leaders, which we all are, right? We all are leaders. We all need to learn these skills of working together. We need to learn the skills of empathy, of listening. And in the video before I said that as humans we depend on verbal communication. But our verbal communication is very flawed because we always have our associations. We all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different upbringings. And in coaching we talk about paradigms. So your paradigms are your thoughts and beliefs that have moved into your subconscious from the first time you heard something. So let me give you an example. If you were brought up and you would always hear, what's a nice example, lying is bad. Okay, so let's say your parents were really particular about the lying thing. Yeah? As an adult, you have that paradigm, lying is a no-go. So if someone lies to you and you find out, you have an immediate reaction to it, right? So we call them triggers as well, right? Your triggers are always created by something that's in your subconscious mind. So there's an instantaneous reaction. It's important to understand, because very often someone who really pisses us off, sorry to say that bluntly, they're not a bad person. They just don't operate according to our paradigms, okay? And because we act according to what's in our subconscious mind, we don't have a chance to sit back and to think about what just happened. So there's different parts of our brain that are engaged. If we actually think about something, it happens in the prefrontal cortex, which is in the front of our brain. If we happen to have something in our subconscious mind, we respond with our limbic system, which is our subconscious mind. We can of course override that. Yeah? So some of you might know I always react overly to something, and you might start to work on that behavior. And then slowly we can change it and we bring something else, we move something else into your subconscious mind. Okay? So the brain is trying to help us. The brain is trying to be very efficient. And it happens with simple things just as movement. In the beginning, when we learn how to walk, your brain has to think about every single part of the movement. It has to think about lifting the foot, shifting the weight, bringing the foot all the way forward, striding, setting the foot down, shifting the weight, coming up. Now, of course, you don't do that anymore, right? Brushing your teeth. If I ask you now, how did it feel to brush your teeth this morning? Half of you probably wonder if they even brushed their teeth this morning. Because it's so automated, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to feel it, you don't have to worry about that stuff. Yeah? And the same thing happens with our emotional responses. If we were to have to think about every single emotional response, we'd be very busy all day long and we wouldn't really have any mind capacity to think about other things. So your brain is trying to help you. Why am I mentioning all of this with leadership and management training? Because now we're in a team. We need to learn how to understand each other. Now think back to what I said about horses requiring, demanding authenticity. So by watching, by observing team members, each and every one in the team can learn a lot about the way these other people in the team operate. And maybe you can relate if I give you an example of you're working in a team and you have that one team member and they're driving you crazy because they do everything exactly the opposite to how you would do it. Anyone can relate? Ever happened? No? Yeah, you have that person and you're just like, come on, just do it. Do it like this. No? You're all very patient people, I have to say. But normally people can relate to that. And why is that? Because again, you know, we don't see the beauty of other people's way of doing things. Now, in horse-assisted leadership training or team management training, it's actually beautiful to watch people get to their goal in a completely different way how you would do it. And in the beginning, I normally can see people that are getting a little bit itchy. They're like, oh, come on, just do it that way. But everybody gets to their goal. And it's then after and through observing that we realize there's always more than one way to get to the goal. And they are all right ways. They're all beautiful ways. And they all have a different learning along the way. So that's something that we can nicely observe with the horses. And again, it's down to the fact that we have to be authentic, that we have to be real, because otherwise the horses will let us know. If there's any kind of fakeness, any kind of pretense, it's not going to work. And then, of course, we have horse-assisted rehabilitation. Now, one is the physical rehabilitation. I already talked about that a little bit. So in physical rehabilitation, very often is just immensely beneficial to have someone being seated on the horse, just experiencing the movement, especially for people that are not that mobile themselves, so they can really experience the beauty of movement. And it's an empowering experience as well. You are higher up on a horse, you know, for people that that often maybe are in a wheelchair, it's beautiful to have that opposite feeling of being up, you know, of being that elevated, of being carried, of being supported. So that's very beneficial. But when we talk about rehabilitation, we can also talk about substance abuse, for example. We can talk about any kind of addictive behavior, but we can also talk about aggression. We can talk about any kind of behavior issues that are not necessarily accepted in society. So anger management, but also stress management, post-traumatic stress disorder. Because being with a horse is extremely calming, as I mentioned before. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in the next section, which is the science. So before we dive into that, let me just say, science these days, we like to back up everything, we like to investigate everything, and a lot of what we are investigating we already know intuitively. A good example is yoga, for example. Most people like yoga, they like the idea of doing yoga and meditation, and now there's a lot of studies out there that are proving why it's so good and so beneficial. And if you want to talk about science in a very statistical way, a good study is a study that is easy to be reproduced. Meaning you want to be able to repeat the same study and get the same results. That's difficult when we do anything with horses. Because in theory, we would have to have the same horses, we would have to have people with the same conditions, we would need to have the same facilitator, and then we want a lot of that, and we want to be able to reproduce it. So it makes it a little bit difficult. However, as I said before, we're really just backing up stuff that we already know intuitively. Just pulled out two studies. There's many studies out there at the moment. So the first one I pulled out because it describes, if you want to read that for yourself, it basically just describes what I said before, that we need to be present, we need to work with our body language, we need to be able to read body language, ours and the body language of the horses and the body language of others. Sorry. And and that animals are prey, that horses are prey animals, and that's why they request this authenticity. And the second one was a systematic review. So a review is you take lots of studies, you put them together, and then you try and get the quintessence out of it. And here they actually started with 432 studies. And they had to narrow them down because they all didn't fall into the right category. So as I told you, it's a little bit difficult to do that kind of research. But what they were talking about here was the influence on the heart rate. So how much does working with horses affect the heart rate of the human? So with humans, it has been measured that we all have our energy field. And with our energy field, we have a certain frequency. Now, we have very low frequencies, and I think the lowest is fear. If we operate from a state of fear, we have a very low energy. If we operate from a place of happiness, of joy, we have the highest frequency. It goes all the way up. And sometimes if you step into a person's energy field, you can actually feel that you're almost being repelled. And with other people, you're being drawn into. And that goes down to the energy. Now, this is really scientifically proven. I'm not just telling you. I know it sounds a little bit, up in the clouds if you're hearing this the first time. But it is really proven. So if you ever meet someone, you're like, nah, I didn't click with that person. It's normally a different frequency that you're operating on. And again, they're not a bad person, they're just on a different frequency right now. That can change. You might meet them another time, another place, and everything is fine. Horses have much bigger energy fields because they have a much bigger heart. So their heartbeat already affects us and calms us down. Their energy field encapsulates us. And if you put the two together, it becomes an even bigger energy field. So when you step close to a horse, most people feel that immediate calmness, if it's a calm horse. We can also feel the immediate excitement if it's a running horse. You know, like in the video I showed some of the running horses. It's exciting, it's invigorating, and both can be used. because whatever energy we need, we can get, we can create, and we can share as well. Now, as I told you, a lot of the horses we work with are rescue horses. And the reason why that is special is because these horses are not used for riding as much or not at all anymore. Again, Yasmin is going to be talking much more about that. So that means that these horses are really used to just be horses. A little bit more than the equestrian horses that kind of expect that every time somebody approaches them, this person is going to jump on their back and want to ride off. Yeah, you see how that's a completely different approach. So we're coming in, we're greeting the horse, and in the beginning the horses might be a bit like, okay, well, what are we doing? And then they realize, oh, we're doing nothing. Okay, cool. And they just do their thing, you know, and we just work with them in that way. So we're not asking the horses to participate in anything that they don't want to participate in. We don't use force, and it becomes this really nice, well-rounded thing. So which is why everything I'm talking to you about today is really the future of horses in the wellness industry, because it is wellness for the horses as well as it is wellness for us people as well. It enriches our wellness experience. It provides an opportunity for horses that can no longer be part of the traditional equestrian world to have a use, to have a function. A lot of these horses are used to have a use, to have a job. And as with people, for many horses, it is not nice to suddenly not have a job anymore and to be left alone in their box and not have any interaction, right? We see that on many of our senior population, they actually go out and they like to do charity work. They like to be involved. They like to interact with other community members. And it's a little bit the same with horses as well, right? Not for every horse. Some horses like to be by themselves, as is the same with our senior population in humans. But for a lot of the horses, this is beneficial work as well. And if we're talking from a profitable point of view, of course, if we're using horses in this way, the horses still have a job. They still earn their living. They still have a function, they still have a role. So it's really this well-rounded package, a really well-rounded benefit that we have. So here on the slide, I just summarized, again, these are Yasmin's horses. I just summarized how horses can facilitate change. So they can do so on an intellectual level, on a spiritual level, on a physical level, on an emotional level. Intellectual, because we can actually draw direct links between what we experience with the horses, even into the boardroom or meeting room. This sounds very strange in the beginning, but immediately if I'm asking someone lead a horse, we will see so many similarities. My colleague was telling the story how she had this person, mid-level manager, and he came in and he wanted to always touch the horse. So he was always holding the neck and walking along that way. And it was his way of doing. And immediately some of his colleagues were saying, oh yeah, of course. And he wasn't aware of that, and he was like, why are you saying of course? And he was like, well, because you're always putting your hand on my shoulder. When we walk, you're always doing that. And it was interesting because the person wasn't aware that he was doing it. And then this whole conversation started. Why are you doing that? You know, because some of his team members actually didn't like it. They almost felt belittled. They were like, why are you always holding me? And he was like, no, that's my way of connecting. So he was able to explain, to understand, to realize, because of the horse, that he needed that physical connection to people. Otherwise, he just felt a little bit insecure. And he was able to bring it that way. So that was him intellectually and emotionally understanding what he was doing. His team members got the benefit out of it because they realized that's why he's doing it. And they felt so much more comfortable after with him doing it, you know. And yes, it was a nice learning effect. And we talked about most of the other things already. In spiritual, by accessing the wisdom of the herd, interspecies communication. So in a herd, everyone is protected and safe. You know, again, that's a nice thing to take into the boardroom as well. And of course, being outside, having that physical touch is interesting and good for most people to have. So, here are the applications that we have. So we can work with trauma, we can work in therapy, as I already mentioned, inclusion coaching, rehabilitation, leadership, stress management, team building, family and team constellations, depression, anxiety, and learning enhancement, of course. So yes, that brings me to the end. If you'd like to know anything else, please hang around, ask me some questions, or if you have any question that you'd like to ask now, feel free to do that as well. Good. Well, thank you so much, and please come back. Are you starting now? So yes, we will start. Thank you so much.